In the middle of downtown Manhattan, surrounded by glass towers and blinking lights, there is one building that looks like it forgot it lives in a city. No windows, no balconies, no lit offices at night. Just a sheer concrete slab with vents, cameras, and an entrance that feels less like a lobby and more like a checkpoint. The address is 33 Thomas Street. For phone engineers, it was once the AT&T Long Lines building, a hardened backbone node for old-school international communications. Thanks to documents leaked by Edward Snowden, the same structure now carries another name, Titanpointe, a key listening post where the National Security Agency quietly tapped into one of the largest telecom networks on Earth. The original idea on paper is easy to sell. After the attacks of September 11th, the American public was terrified and furious. Politicians wanted to look decisive. Out of that moment came the USA PATRIOT Act, hundreds of pages of emergency legislation that expanded surveillance powers at high speed. It was passed barely weeks after the towers fell, even though bills of that complexity usually take months or years. Supporters said it was temporary, targeted at terrorists, wrapped in safeguards and oversight. The reality that gradually emerged in the following decade was an infrastructure built to watch almost everyone, almost all the time, while telling the public that nothing important had really changed. Snowden's leaks ripped the polite language away. PowerPoint slides from inside the NSA showed engineers celebrating when they finally slipped into major corporate systems. They were not just peeking at a few suspicious foreigners. They were capturing vast streams of data from backbone links, data centers, and undersea cables. The public had been told that what was being collected was just metadata, as though that word somehow turned dangerous information into harmless exhaust. In practice, metadata means who you call, when, from where, for how long, how often, and in what pattern. Given enough of that, you can reconstruct someone's social world, habits, and likely future decisions without ever hearing the content of a single sentence. The moment that crystallized the dishonesty for many people was James Clapper's testimony before Congress. Asked directly whether the NSA was collecting any type of data at all on millions or hundreds of millions of Americans, he replied, "No, sir, not wittingly." It was a lawyerly answer, and it turned out to be false. Once the Snowden documents were public, it became obvious that the scope of collection was not a rounding error. It was the design. When confronted, Clapper later described his answer as the least untruthful response he felt he could give in an open hearing. That small phrase captured something ugly. Officials felt entitled to mislead the public about programs that fundamentally altered the relationship between citizens and the state. To understand why Titanpointe matters, you have to look past the one building and see the pattern. The Patriot Act's Section 215 lowered the bar for access to business records, including phone logs. Instead of needing probable cause to believe a specific person was involved in a crime, the government only had to argue that the information sought was relevant to an authorized investigation. When relevance is defined by the same people who want the data, it expands like gas to fill every space. Combine that legal language with secret agreements between agencies and telecom companies, and it becomes easy to justify bulk collection first, narrow filtering later, all under the seal of classified court orders. Those orders largely flow through the Foreign Intelligence Surveillance Court, a body created in the late 1970s after the Church Committee exposed serious abuses by the FBI and CIA. The original goal was straightforward: create a special court that would review sensitive surveillance requests targeting foreign agents, protecting national security without turning intelligence agencies loose on domestic political enemies. Decades later, the same court was approving broad interpretations of new counterterrorism authorities behind closed doors with approval rates that hovered close to 100%. Technically, there was oversight. Practically, it functioned as a stamp. Defenders of this entire system argue that you cannot see the gains because the successes are classified. Maybe somewhere a bombing was prevented or a cell disrupted because a pattern of calls lit up in a database at the right moment. It is possible. What is equally clear is that these tools have drifted into uses far from the nightmare scenario that justified them. Drug cases, financial investigations, and domestic political issues have all brushed against authorities, sold to the public as surgical instruments aimed only at foreign terrorists. When parents protesting school policies find themselves labeled potential domestic extremists in official memos, the mission has clearly expanded. For people who lived through the attacks in New York or Washington, the emotional pull of whatever it takes is real and lasting. Watching buildings collapse or searching for missing friends burns a lesson into the brain that is hard to argue with in abstract language about rights and process. That grief and rage were easy to weaponize in the rush to pass sweeping powers, and for a while almost no one wanted to be the politician who slowed things down to read the fine print. Years later, when the immediate fear has faded, the authorities are still on the books, the concrete buildings are still wired in, and rolling them back requires a different kind of courage. The willingness to say that a permanent state of exception is not compatible with a constitutional system. The physical reality of a place like Titanpointe underlines that expansion. Those concrete walls are not there because someone likes brutalist architecture. They exist because the building was designed to keep running during disasters, to protect equipment that entire networks depended on. That very resilience, combined with its centrality in AT&T's network, made it ideal for a different purpose. A one-stop point where intelligence agencies could quietly mirror huge volumes of international and domestic traffic. You do not need a listening post in every tower if you can reach the cables that feed them all. It is tempting to treat all of this as an abstract civics problem, something for lawyers and activists and angry commentators to fight over while ordinary people shrug and go back to their feeds. The uncomfortable truth is that the architecture of surveillance does not stop at government programs or fortified telecom buildings. It blends hand in glove with the data collection habits of private platforms that track click paths, location histories, purchase records, and social graphs in microscopic detail. You can protest government overreach while voluntarily giving hundreds of companies a clearer picture of your daily life than your closest friend has. That environment slowly trains you to behave differently. A young teacher writes an email to colleagues about a controversial policy. Halfway through, she imagines the message pulled out of context years later, misread by a supervisor or dredged up in a complaint, and she quietly deletes the draft. A community organizer starts to move sensitive conversations off mainstream apps and into encrypted group chats, but still finds herself hesitating before sending anything critical, because in the back of her mind, everything feels permanent and searchable. No one has threatened them. They adapt to the sense that their words live forever in machines they do not control. On a more mundane level, the same networks that make bulk surveillance feasible are optimized to keep you continuously stimulated. Your phone pings not because something genuinely urgent happened, but because some service knows the optimal gap to pull you back. Recommendation systems learn that outrage and fear keep you scrolling longer, and they feed you a personalized drip of both. A man finishes dinner planning to read, opens one app second, and emerges 40 minutes later with a vague sense that the world is burning, but no concrete action to take. Surveillance thrives in that fog. People who are exhausted and overstimulated rarely organize serious resistance. There is also a quieter kind of exposure that rides on these channels. The erosion of boundaries with chronically draining people. When your messaging apps are always open and always connected, the coworker who dumps their panic into your inbox at midnight has the same route into your bedroom as your closest friends. Over time, that steady flow of other people's crisis and drama becomes another form of constant monitoring. You are not just watched by institutions. You are on call for everyone who has your number. And it wears down the part of you that might otherwise look up and ask hard questions about the larger system. None of this means you are helpless. It does mean that meaningful change has to happen on more than one level. On the structural side, it requires rolling back or sharply limiting authorities that were sold as exceptional and temporary. Sunset clauses need to actually sunset instead of being renewed by default in the noise of other political battles. Secret interpretations of law should not exist in a democracy that claims to value informed consent. Courts like the FISA panel need genuine adversarial process, not one-sided presentations in a sealed room where no one ever argues for restraint. At the same time, governments respond to incentives, and those incentives are shaped by what people tolerate and where they focus. It is easier for legislators to extend vague security powers than to be seen as weak by voting against them. That dynamic changes only when enough citizens understand the trade-offs clearly and care enough to make noise. That does not require fantasy revolution talk. It looks like supporting organizations that litigate surveillance abuses, pressing representatives for clear positions instead of slogans, and refusing to let every debate collapse into team sports where anything done by your side is excused. On the personal level, there is a different kind of work: reclaiming attention and shrinking your own exposed surface area. That does not mean trying to disappear or living in a cabin with no electricity. It means being deliberate about who gets your data, which devices truly need to listen all day, and how many platforms you trust with the details of your life. It means learning basic digital hygiene the way previous generations learned how to lock a door and recognize a scam. Small shifts. Cutting non-essential notifications, using end-to-end encryption where it makes sense, logging out of services you barely use, add up to a less legible profile. Just as importantly, there is the task of protecting one private room in your own head. That can be as simple as keeping an offline notebook where you think through ideas before broadcasting them, or carving out regular time away from screens so your thoughts are not constantly shaped by whatever the feed serves next. The point is not to hide because you are afraid, but to ensure that not every curiosity, doubt, or change of mind gets turned into a data point and filed forever. A healthy democracy depends on people who can think in rough draft, in private, before committing themselves in public. The existence of places like 33 Thomas Street is a reminder that infrastructure is never neutral. Buildings, cables, and statutes all embody choices about power: who holds it, who is subject to it, and how much trust we are prepared to extend. For years, the story around mass surveillance was wrapped in reassuring language about targeted operations and responsible guardians. Snowden's leaks and subsequent investigations showed that story to be incomplete at best. The question now is not whether the tools exist, they do, but whether the people living under them are prepared to demand limits, clarity, and genuine respect for the lines their constitutions claim to draw. If they are not, concrete walls and windowless floors will continue to hum quietly in the middle of our cities, doing work few understand for purposes decided far away from the people whose lives flow through those cables.
Smartphones designed to surface constant notifications and clicks from multiple apps, fragmenting attention and keeping users in a reactive state.
emphasis here is meticulous policy work, ensuring that surveillance laws include clear definitions and meaningful sunset clauses. Sunset means sunset. Concrete itself becomes a symbol of decisions made decades ago, engineering choices that now
Our programs emphasize tight targeting and robust safeguards.
we use limited, focused tools with strict oversight.
Global jolt. The documents detailed how the NSA was tapping into the very backbone of the internet, revealing the true scope of mass surveillance.
synchronization rules, and